Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today with the CMB team. I'm super excited for the content that we have today, but before I hand it on over to our speakers, I just want to go over a few housekeeping things. First, we've got that chat box. Let us know where you're tuning in, drop your LinkedIn. If you're a regular here, you know that we love to connect. Next, we've got that questions box. If you have any questions, drop them there and we'll get to them at the end. And now I will hand it on over to Casey and Richard, who will be talking about Gen AI research, how to leverage technology and up-level your insights.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Bridget. Hi, everyone. I'm Casey, Vice President of the Qualitative Insights and Strategy practice here at CMB.
And I'm Richard Shanti. I'm VP of Product and Innovation. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. We are excited to share our learnings and our journey that CMB has been on as we have been exploring ResTech, especially our experience and learnings along the way with AI charged solutions. We know AI is a hot topic today. CMB has been exploring both consumer sentiment and adoption, as well as vetting and piloting a wealth of new technologies built for research and ancillary to research. So through this conversation today, our hope is that we can share some insight into our respective journey and some inspiration and learning for the broader insights community.
Yes, and we wanted to start here. In our experience engaging with our clients and with prospects that we work with, and our observation, attending conferences and attending webinars like this one, we sort of see some steps in the journey that our peers are going through. We're going through as well. That some organizations are in, what we'd call a reluctant space. It could be that they're skeptical about the use of AI in general, or it could be that they have legal constraints where they work that just, put them into that state. We see others that are inquisitive, so they're interested in what AI can bring to the table, but, maybe do not have strong executive support or funding to do anything than, more than observe and play around a little bit personally. There are other companies that are actively experimenting, and that this is, I think, where maybe funding and executive support is beginning to emerge, and then finally others that are very actively implementing and layering in AI to what they do as a business. And I should say this is, very focused on the insight space. We see an interesting duality that, there are companies in various sectors that are investing in a big way in AI in things like their call centers or in their products. But when it comes to their insights team, there's not necessarily alignment with how they're treating that space. But we're interested in sort of where you stand. So we have a little poll that we're going to bring up with Bridget's help. Just let us know where you think your organization is on this spectrum. We'll give you a few minutes, and then we will. I'm not going to vote. I'm going to skip looking at that.
I just did the same thing.
And Bridget, you can let us know when you think the numbers are ready to share.
Well, it looks like things are starting to slow down a little bit. So far, 46% of the attendees have said that they're experimenting. 37% have said implementing. 16% said inquisitive, and 1% have said reluctant.
Okay.
Awesome. Love it. Richard and I were hypothesizing a little bit ahead of the session as we were preparing, and just thinking that we would expect to see curious researchers hopefully experimenting and implementing. So I'm very excited to see that in the poll results there as well for the vast majority of folks.
Okay. Oops.
And so as we think about kind of primary applications, the benefits that researchers are seeing as we are deploying AI and generative AI technologies in the insights industry, We've kind of distilled this into two primary buckets of benefits that we think that research and insights professionals are seeing and able to deliver back to their businesses. On the left-hand side, we have the bucket of efficiencies, things like saving time, freeing up researchers' time to do higher value tasks are some of the efficiency gains that we're seeing from research teams and insights professionals that are leveraging Gen AI, including here at CMB. Lowering the cost of research as well is very much a work in progress, but things like alternative sample sources, scalability in research, those are some other efficiencies that we are starting to see too as we think about the impact of generative AI. On the other side of the coin too, as we think about efficacies and efficiencies that we as researchers are realizing as we deploy these generative AI technologies, we are seeing extended utility of primary research. Researchers are able to get more out of the primary research that they're conducting, creating data lakes, being able to query those data lakes over time as well to yield additional insights and answer ancillary questions from stakeholders that may fall slightly outside of a research scope, but may have some relevance there as well. Also, as we think about effectiveness, generative AI is also helping us improve respondent experiences, helping us meet people where they are, helping us right-size the research methods that we are deploying in new ways, and really engaging folks. We're seeing a lot of transformation in especially the surveying side of things, the ability to gain more context out of more dynamic open-end responses that are supercharged by generative AI are one of the areas we're seeing more effectiveness and an improved respondent experience. We're also seeing things like synthetic data bubbling up to the top of conversations and hot topics about where the industry is going. We're also seeing generative AI help us unlock immersive activation in new ways, and that's having a big impact on how we as research professionals deliver the insights and the role that insights can play as we're guiding our stakeholders through strategic business decisions. We're also seeing improved accuracy, sometimes deploying a hybrid of generative AI-led research methods and human-led on the qualitative side, comparing and contrasting the trends and the themes that we're hearing there and what this all means as we start to think about synthesis for our research as well.
We don't think these are the only impacts, but I think efficiency and effectiveness, if you will, are probably the near term, more attainable benefits that can hit our industry. We do think there's transformational opportunity with AI. We're intrigued by the use of AI agents and synthetic data, but still exploring in those spaces. So yeah, I think there are bigger impacts that are coming downstream, but we think movement in these two areas is that sort of essential trigger to getting some wins, developing some comfort and confidence and trust around AI. This is a slide we pulled from some research on research that we did earlier this summer. We were using some of the tools we're here to talk about today to capture consumer attitudes about AI. Both personally, what they were experiencing, and also sort of asking them to step into their role, what they do in their work life, and talk about the opportunities they see in that space. And we thought this is sort of interesting to bring to the table today, in the sense that what you can see here, whether it's symptom checking in the healthcare domain, or virtual try it on or see it in your space in e-commerce, to things like translation and dubbing and synthetic voices, being projected to eliminate voice actors, in the future. Really, transformational, disruptive opportunities that AI can trigger. But it's not just AI making the insight space, more disrupted. I think, things like buy now, pay later in the payments and credit card domains has generated a lot of change over the last couple of years. And GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, not only transforming healthcare and nutrition, but they have stocks like General Mills and Hershey and others, go sort of experiencing a downward trajectory as those drugs have hit the scene. So, I think we're in interesting times, as they say. And, sort of relevant to a philosophy that we're developing that we call AI plus HI being human intelligence. We see that as a really dynamic and essential combination to the path forward, helping us to generate fresh ideas and elevated insights, for our clients that are facing these disruptions in their marketplace. The AI helping us maybe to do more thorough analysis, better context setting, better decision making, helping to drive better decision making, and the essential piece of HI in sort of, helping us to address things like model bias or, ensuring we are taking ethical approaches to the way that we apply these technologies. So, we think the future and certainly, this philosophy underpins everything that we do in the domain of AI. So our journey in many ways started, with the launch of ChatGPT back in November of 2022. Shortly after that, really due to our executive team's genuine interest in AI and, confidence that it was going to be a big part of our industry, and we wanted to be at the forefront of that. We decided to develop some guidelines so that, we could give our teams the ability to confidently experiment with tools without putting any of our clients or the respondents that we engage with or the partners that we work with, at any risk. So we developed a set of guidelines that, some do's and don'ts, some documentation, how do you set yourself up in incognito mode to ensure that, the interaction you're having with the chatbot is not going to divulge, any CMB IP or client IP or anything like that. And we rolled those out, and it really helped us to, give the confidence to do some really legitimate and interesting experimentation, just using tools like Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini. But we also found that the guidelines document has become an important backdrop to the way that we evaluate third-party vendors. And a lot of it ties back to the HI plus AI, the fact that that's one of our guiding principles. That is something we look for in the tools that we're evaluating. So we want to make sure the tools are walled gardens, that, there's no risk of leakage of, the content of the conversations we're having with respondents getting into, some public model. We want to make sure that those tools have a path that allows us to inject a HI into the process so that we get that, synchronicity of AI plus HI and can deliver that in the way that we're executing with the tools. And, so here's some categories of ResTech that we've looked at. Sort of first at the macro level, we've piloted and onboarded a significant number of tools over the course of the last 18 months. And there are also tools and capabilities that we're still vetting and piloting that we're not using in our business unless we're using it in a controlled, collaborative way in the form of a pilot with a client. And then obviously there are tools that we've rejected, and the ones we reject, I mean, there's no, nothing unique, I think, about that. Some of them are just solutions that don't really fit nicely into our portfolio. It may be that they were rejected because we found an alternative tool or platform that did the job a little bit better. We also, have some that we rejected that may just be a timing issue that we're very much keeping on our radar because we like what they do. We see a lot of promise, but the platform maybe is not baked enough for us to be using it at this time. One of the interesting things that came out of this process for us is that, going into the process, we sort of prided ourselves on being tool agnostic. If a client asked us to bring a tool to the table, or we would be happy to do so. But I think the heavy vetting that we've done, the learnings that we've captured, the experience that we've gotten through, something like 30 pilots that we've done, some on our own in the form of research on research and others in collaboration with clients. We found that we've assembled a best of breed collection of tools that we're really passionate about, both in the magic of working with some really bright and intelligent people who support their technologies, and also in the way that it sort of augmented and expanded the portfolio of services that we can provide to our clients.
And I think as we think about how we sort of approach the process of vetting and operationalizing the technologies that we are bringing into CMB, we do have a fairly structured approach to that process that really starts with need identification. As Richard mentioned, it's not a one size fits all. We're really thinking intentionally about our client base, the type of work that we do, how these technologies can complement, enhance, or broaden in a really impactful way. And so we're thinking about that at the upfront step where we're identifying the need and starting to vet the laundry list of solutions that are popping up onto the scene these last 18 plus months as I think generative AI has really just taken off. From there, once we identify that fit within our organization and the type of work that we do, we then invest heavily into testing those solutions, exploring the potential for them, exploring the use case and application. And folks from all across CMB are involved in that testing and vetting process. When we explore use cases, how we will use this technology, how we can use this technology, we then start to pilot and we reflect. And I think that one of the interesting things that I found to be particularly valuable during that reflection process in the test phase is really talking to respondents who are engaging with, when we're talking about generative AI-led methods, how they felt about the experience, what they thought about the experience, not only what went well, what maybe didn't feel as comfortable or felt like it was not right sized for their engagement too. So we're really keeping the respondent experience at the forefront of our vetting process as we think about these technologies. From there, behind the scenes, CMB does have an ISO 27001 certification, so we do take our compliance and security very seriously. So the auditing steps that come into play around data quality, security, and compliance controls are also things that our team is actively working on as we are exploring these new technologies on the market today as well. It does not stop there. We do have to operationalize these technologies too, meaning that we have to ensure that our team understands when and how to effectively deploy these technologies. And so we invest heavily in educating, knowledge sharing, and making sure that folks are qualified and competent with these tools and technologies before deploying them on commissioned work from our clients too. And so as we think about how this has come into fruition, as we get into our next slide here, we have seen sort of two primary use cases with deploying generative AI. We call one really sort of the human-led method where we're deploying traditional methodologies and AI is more supporting in the background. Think about deploying a conversational open-end within a traditional survey. Think about human-moderated interviews and an AI-supported analysis on the back end. That's one method that we're seeing generative AI shaping and transforming how we work as we think about research and insights. Flipping that and thinking about the other side of the coin, we are also seeing expanded use case and adoption of AI-led methods as well. And as we think back to that slide that Richard shared relative to the consumer adoption and how consumers are using, there is comfort in a lot of these like self-service customer service models that we have seen come to light. And so we have seen comfort and appetite and are deploying AI-led methods as well, whether that's conversational surveying, whether that's an AI-moderated interview. But those methods, even when AI is in the foreground, there's still very much human guidance that is necessary and that is involved in the successful research study that is AI-led. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute here. I do think as we think about the outcomes, what we're seeing, what we're getting, as we think about these research methods, we need to jump forward, I think, 2 slides here on this. But the outcomes that we're seeing, these methods are, as I mentioned, helping us elevate the role of insights. They're expanding our context. They're helping us as researchers explore in new ways and more broadly, synthesize, and also share more effectively as well.
Another thing that we're sort of seeing as part of our evolution is that in many ways we're starting to cluster these tools to answer our clients' burning questions. So more of a multi-method, multi-sourced insights. So there's something we did recently with a client where we combined some targeted social scraping of content, some work through influencer networks with some traditional qual and some fast turn quant through our CMBA or CMB Accelerate practice. So, excuse me, using this technology in more dynamic, sort of multi-tiered, more agile, more test and tack kind of approaches.
And our strategy, as Richard had mentioned earlier, is really centered around the complementary relationship of human intelligence and artificial intelligence. We really firmly believe that our industry experience, that our methodological experience and tool expertise adds value to these research programs and projects at every step in the process. As we've deployed AI moderated research, we've come to understand that this method requires a new lens to development. Crafting the right questions and the right flow as I reflect on our qualitative team's journey. It's nuanced. It's different than just developing a discussion guide for a human moderated or a human-led interview. As we think about early pilots that our team conducted, a lot of the learnings, a lot of the reflections, and a lot of this is coming from respondents talking about the experience. Things like expecting a discussion guide that we built to take 30 minutes for someone to answer and hearing from respondents that it was actually closer to 45 minutes. The intentionality of the question flow, the limit to the number of questions, and the importance of the framing of questions, I think are really important considerations and have a bit of a learning curve as we reflect on our journey deploying generative AI technologies. The solutions that we found too, I think, as I reflected on our journey, they're not all plug and play. There are companies that are touting and rolling out things like generative AI developed guides. I know there have been conversations about how far can we get in developing a screener or a report as we think about going from data collection to results. We've found that effective deployment still requires a human, both in design, oversight, and synthesis as well. AI is helping us build things like synthetic personas, immersive worlds and experiences in the metaverse as we think about activation. But again, as we pause to reflect, I think it's so important. These storytelling mechanisms, they're only as good as the researcher's industry and methodological expertise, the storytelling skills that a research team brings to the table as well. Things like the ability to engineer the right prompts to guide the technology, I think are headlines relevant to generative AI adoption that go beyond just the insights industry as well.
Yeah, for us, one of the biggest unlocks of AI is, this ability to blend qualitative and quantitative at scale. And each time we do it, often with, a different set of tools, there's a learning that comes from it, and I think those learnings are helping us, improve the experience for respondents. And at the same time, maybe, get better attention on the job to be done by the respondent by queuing up what we're asking them to do in a more effective and more engaging way. This is an example of sort of HI and AI being combined in practice. So we've always had sort of a multi-tiered tools plus humans approach to data integrity. But we feel we've elevated it recently. So we recently added a third-party tool, the sort of QC tool that you see in that second ring of the funnel going from the top. That allows us to capture bad actors before our survey launches, using AI and using other markers. And then, but using humans to sort of set the threshold of how we're going to apply that to a particular project. And then using, AI in the form of text analytics and human judgment to make decisions further down the stream at the very end to look at open ends, for example, to better understand whether we're getting a cut and paste response, a cookie cutter response, or someone who's really engaged in answering the question for us. Sorry, this one's you, Casey.
Yeah, no, I totally unmuted myself. And so as we think about what we're hoping that researchers take away from this, I want to encourage you all to invest in yourself. For those that manage teams, invest in your team. This technology is not going away. This is something that we are seeing being adopted both by consumers and perhaps fast following, hopefully, in most places and spaces as we think about applying this in the insights capacity as well. So we have a few kind of tips and areas of focus as we think about making the most and how to get started as you think about investing in yourself and your team, keeping yourself moving, because generative AI is not a static technology. The pace of evolution of this type of technology, the use cases, the adoption is changing daily, if not even faster. I think it's so important to understand the landscape, and that's a responsibility that I hope that each of us as researchers hold very central to ourselves in our professional identity. We know that this is a rapidly evolving technology, that there are new solutions coming into the marketplace. We should be familiarizing ourselves with the latest tools, with the latest platforms. Updates to existing platforms that we are using is very important in this context as well. And then also staying abreast of trends and themes too. For example, at CMB, we're eager to explore tools and solutions that are leveraging Gen AI and are able to handle larger unstructured data sets, as Richard was talking about, bringing qual and quant closer together. So we're empowering our teams to understand the landscape, to think about how we are working with data sets, and to keep an eye out, not just with ResTech in the insights industry, but looking beyond that and looking at how we can bring and adapt other technologies into our insights community as well. It's important too to understand and explore case studies. Attending industry conferences or webinars that focus on AI and market research is also important. I will say for those folks that are going to CRC next week, Vanessa from our qualitative team is co-presenting with the client there and is going to do a bit of a researcher's reflection, digging deep into the process of conducting AI moderated interviews as a component of a body of work that they undertook there. So if you'll be at CRC, keep an eye out for that talk to get deeper into process on project and the reflections and learnings along the way there. I think it's also important that as researchers, we explore and embrace hybrid approaches that blend AI and human expertise. AI is helping us streamline, it's helping us automate tasks, but again, human intuition, creativity are those sparks that remain invaluable. Also, as we think about AI, enhancing and contextualizing, but not replacing human-driven qualitative insights. I think also the other piece of this that we as researchers each need to individually own is an understanding of and a commitment to continuing to stay abreast of and evolve our perspective on usage guidelines. So as we think about ethics and transparency, being aware and educating ourselves and our teams about how bias in models and algorithms can influence results. I was just going through some AI image generated content with a colleague this morning and was reflecting on what we may have done, what we may have said that impacted the outcome of that. We need to be mindful of these things and understand the underpinnings of this as we think about how we use and leverage these technologies. Also, I think as we think about transparency, it's really important to understand that not everyone is at the same place in our individual journeys and comfort level with generative AI. So as we think about the delivery of insights, as we think about the breadth of stakeholders that we may be serving, it's really important that we are prepared to explain transparently how we arrived at the solution that we are recommending, how we deployed this method, and any potential biases that may have been introduced as a result of this method as well. And so train yourself, make sure that your teams are trained and talking and sparking those conversations. Look to your colleagues and peers, look to your partners like CMB to help you further your knowledge, to pressure test ideas, and to explore this rapidly evolving landscape.
Now, we thought it might be a good place to sort of end before we get to questions, to talk about, where this may be taking us. And, these are, these probably won't shock anybody, but I think these are the directions that we see as most relevant. First of all, in data capture, I think increasingly, the survey as we know it today is going to be replaced by conversations with consumers at scale. They might be avatar-led. They might be led through by some, more immersive environment. But whether it's quant or qual, I think it's going to be a more natural conversation that happens. In the analysis front, you can see this already starting to emerge in the, with these purpose-built GPTs, like an analysis assistant GPT. We're increasingly, because we're multi-sourcing insights from surveys and from other unstructured data or structured data, you can think of the AI as, enabling you to have a conversation with the data. And what comes out of that, that conversation, which can happen over time or in one session, is that the conversation is a path to new insights. And then finally, when it comes to results, we think, that combination of AI plus HI is really going to, enhance the nature of the insights that we are able to get at, and probably make immersive storytelling, more important for us as an industry as we go forward. I think with that, we can pause for some questions if there are any.
Yes, I've seen a few. I think Bridget's coming back on here to navigate us through the questions.
Yes, I was just going to say we do have so many great questions. So thank you, everyone, for submitting, and keep dropping your questions, and we'll try our best to get to all of them. But to kick things off, what are the best resources you've seen to operationalize effectively?
I'm happy to start with that one. I think that as we think about external resources, the tool and the platforms that we are using have wonderful support teams that have really helped us. A lot of the tools that we have adopted have been because of the support, because of the guidance, because of the pressure testing as we come to them and say, we have a wild idea, how could we? And they match our energy and come back to brainstorm that, right? So I think the synergy there and leveraging that, as well as the wealth of kind of help content, training documentation that these platforms and tools are putting out, is a great place as researchers to be paying attention. The other place and space, I think, as we think about effective operationalizing, is the knowledge sharing that is going on within our organization as well. We work so cross-functionally, and we are not shy about sharing knowledge, sharing ownership, sharing stories. We have a formal monthly all-company meeting where we talk about and share highlights of cool and innovative projects that we've done, interesting projects or applications that we have explored. So there's a lot of internal knowledge sharing as well. And I encourage researchers to look at their own teams, look at industry communities as a place and space for those types of conversations and learning.
Yeah, I can add to that it's actually a big conversation within CMB as we pilot, as we onboard, pilot, and go to full operationalization. I hate that word of these tools. That there's a lot of effort involved in piloting and sort of getting the ball rolling with a number of different tools, and that requires resources. And then there's probably a significantly larger cut of resources that are needed to make those tools an even bigger part of the fabric of your company. So we're starting. We try to ensure that the platforms we pick have strong customer success components, so they bring resources to the table. We have people who are involved early on in projects who become internal subject matter experts who sort of help facilitate as we get to the next project and the next project. Where we expect to get critical mass, we're probably going to have to build up resources to, just make sure we can operate effectively and efficiently, with these technologies. It's a great question.
Yeah, great. Thank you. On the note of piloting, as you've piloted, can you speak more to the reflection process as it relates to consumers?
I can start there if you don't mind, Richard. So I think our team has been very intentional about part of our recruitment process. Part of the ask when we pilot is asking for 10, 15 minutes with a subset of respondents to really ask them and have an opportunity to have a human conversation about the experience. And so top of mind for us is really getting an understanding from respondents. What went well? What could be improved? How did you feel about the length of the survey? Getting an understanding too of where and how people are taking these, engaging with us, right? If you're doing an AI moderated interview or participating in a conversational survey, are you doing it from a mobile device? Are you doing it from a desktop, laptop, computer? And getting a read on that as well to help us understand the experience.
Yeah, that feedback loop is critical, both to ensuring we're delivering the right kind of experience to a respondent, but it also informs our ability to design research effectively using some of these new tools. So it's a learning process, and that feedback loop is key to educating ourselves on what's working and what's not.
Before we move on, Bridget, too, I saw kind of a tangential but related question in the chat that I think we can speak to here as well. When would we recommend using an AI-led interview method as opposed to when we would not? Some of the instances where we've decided that an AI-moderated interview was not appropriate, things where there were emotional nuance. So we're exploring nuance and emotionality between two positioning statements, right? Or two different territories. And we really need a human moderator who can come in with situational awareness, who can come in with emotional intelligence. So that's one example of a place and space where I don't think the technology is quite there yet to be able to adeptly navigate those conversations and uncover the nuance there. Additionally, I also think that as we think about difficult conversations or conversations where we have a potential line of sight and kind of a hypothesized structure to the conversation, but we may need to pivot. There are a few different areas where we may want to explore depending on what's raised. Generative AI-led technologies today are not great at being flexible. And so that flexibility, I think, is very top of mind for companies that are developing these technologies. But from our experiences too, if it feels like a nebulous kind of exploratory conversation, we'd opt for a human moderator that can pivot more intuitively and effectively in that conversation.
Wonderful. Another question we have here from the audience is, can you elaborate on how you are using AI to bring together quant and qualitative data? And how are you using synthetic personas?
Yeah, so synthetic personas, we're collaborating with a client the use case is around a segmentation. So we're using attributes of the segmentation to build a profile for each persona, for each segment, and then giving first us as a research team the ability to interact with those personas. We asked them questions that were part of the original survey we did to see whether it was tracking well with the real respondent research that we conducted. And then we also asked, other questions, and got some super interesting results. We're actually, we just shared those with the client who's collaborating with us, and we're thinking through next steps. So that was part of, what was the other question? Not just personas, but.
Can you elaborate on how you are using AI to bring together quant and qualitative data?
Yes. Yeah. So, one of the themes, we onboarded a lot of technology, but sort of broadly speaking, it addresses sort of four things for us. And one of them is that qual-quant, maybe not quite integration yet, although the integration capabilities are there. It's more, an erosion of the barriers that have separated the two. But one way is chatbots that allow you to do quant studies, but do AI prompted open ends to get more elaborate answers, but also do things like projective techniques and laddering within a quantitative study that can let you get at emotions or let you get at other sort of key decision making criteria to better understand the why behind what people do. And theoretically, you could be in a quant study and you could qualify people for an IDI. And because you don't need to schedule a moderator, you could actually just move somebody from a quant study into an IDI. We haven't done that yet, but theoretically, that kind of activity could be supported. So.
And as I think about bringing qual and quant closer together, one of the more interesting things that I think I've seen our team brought to life, our media and entertainment practice, actually deployed a conversational AI technology at a large-scale event and used that to interview folks in line. It complemented a qualitative method that gave richer stories that we needed to bring together there. But it was really interesting, and I think we wound up with a couple of hundred people that we were able to catch while they were in line for an event activation. And so that was really great to have that combination of kind of the quantitative structure and some of those quantitative metrics, but also the conversational AI brought a really qualitative element to the data capture that we did in the moment there as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. We do still have so many questions to get to. So the next one here, would you guys be able to touch on some challenges you faced in integrating AI into research processes and how you've overcome them?
One that jumps to mind is using AI moderation. I think our first time out, we were asking questions that were maybe a little bit too open, that allowed people to riff in different directions. And then those riffs made some of the follow-up questions that we had queued up more of a mismatch, because we might be asking them to elaborate on something they already told us about. So I think that was not a misstep, not the fact that the technology doesn't work, but just sort of an educational phase of trying to be very specific, so that some of the techniques that you apply for getting elaboration work rather than annoy or get in the way.
And on the operational side too, I think As we think about some of the solutions that we've recommended, I've also seen some of these things stall out when it comes to client readiness, InfoSec, reviews on the client side, legal reviews and approvals. And we've heard of some clients with queues of hundreds of tools and technologies, not just from Insights, but across the organization that are being funneled into one team to review, audit, and approve on their side as well. So we've had some wonderfully creative solutions that I think we've also seen pause there as well as we think about timing that it takes. So as we think about what we can do to get ahead of that, I think having those conversations with clients and clients having those conversations internally to understand what the actual process for bringing these tools and technologies in is and what that timeline typically tends to look like, because that's been another, I think, barrier that we've seen over time.
Awesome. I want to circle back really quickly to qualitative research. How do you handle potential biases in qualitative research, especially when using AI-driven insights?
Richard, I think I can go first on that one if you don't mind. I think really this comes down to that human intelligence side of our strategy, right? I think that we have a responsibility to make sure that humans stay central to this process because of our ability to detect bias. I think exploring and trialing that as part of our vetting and pilot process is one piece of this, asking questions as we're going through auditing to understand the teams behind the technology and their development process and cycle. But also as we think about deploying these methods on project or within research programs, I also think that the diversity of a team, pilot interviews, monitoring the results as they're coming in, also help us with that check. So it's it's honestly an ongoing process, but there are a few steps along the way, both before bringing on the formal technology, but also teaching our teams how to work with this technology and how to spot potential bias as well.
Awesome. Another question we have here is, how do you see Gen AI research contributing to the design of employee engagement programs and corporate events?
Interesting question. Yes, I mean, certainly corporate events. I think, the example that Casey gave of our media practice using some AI technology on the ground while people were in line, the fact that it's a mobile first kind of experience, the fact that it lets you capture things around you in video or image form, as well as the questions you're being asked. I'm not an expert in employee research, but I think, there are significant opportunities, I think, to bring together, different data streams that can help you better understand, the operational pressures on employees, along with things you might ask them about and behaviors you're trying to drive, to sort of better understand that rather complex culture and psychology that sort of creates or results in an employee experience.
Yeah, and I think things like real-time behavior tracking, right, sentiment analysis, even emotional engagement, I think are all things that AI is helping us unlock in new ways that are more accessible. We're able to use these more often, and these are things that are more affordable for companies to implement into these types of programs and events as well.
Wonderful. We are running out of time, unfortunately. I'm not able to get to everyone's questions, but I'm going to drop the link to Casey and Richard's LinkedIn in the chat for those of you that are joining us live. If we didn't get a chance to get to your question, the CMB team will reach out. Alternatively, though, I encourage you to connect with Casey and Richard and reach out via LinkedIn. I just want to remind everyone that this webinar will be available to watch back on the Greenbook website. And I want to give a big thank you to Richard and Casey for being here, and to the whole CMB team, and to our attendees for tuning in. I hope everyone has a wonderful Thursday.
Terrific. Thank you, Bridget.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Feel free to connect with any additional questions. We're always happy to chat and explore.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.